modern times.
Our first dating interview.
Gross.
She's nasty and she's dangerous.
I worked for Dennis Hoff and helped put the famous Moonlight Bunny Ranch on the map.
She's definitely jacked up there.
And I started hitchhiking around the country. I learned real early how to be resourceful. And I learned also that sex was a commodity. So my first 10 years in the industry, most of the brothels were really, really bad. The last place I worked had one window and the whole place got big, okay? On weekends, they would lock up the pay phones because they didn't want me calling home and talking with me and getting upset and leaving. It was awful. But we used to call it prison. So when I first got to the Bunny Ranch, I just got catapulted into the 20th century. And everything was upbeat, 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 upbeat. Fun, 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 fun.
Brothels are not by law allowed to advertise, but they can still go in the media, they can appear on TV shows, they can talk about their businesses, but they can't put up an ad in the newspaper. So Dennis was very savvy. He used the media. Oh, I can't put an ad up? Great, I'll go on CNN and talk about it.
Dennis Hoff, Bunny Ranch owner. It's just genius right there. And who would have ever thought, who had the balls to put prostitutes on TV? Who thought that was gonna sell?
After the airline sticks it to you,
Dennis did, and it did. We would go on every talk show. At the time it was talk shows, right? There was Jenny Jones.
But what's the right word for it? Is prostitute okay now?
I got most outrageous guest of the year on Jenny Jones. There was Tyra Banks.
Joining us also is Dennis Hoff. He owns the Moonlight Bunny Ranch.
Oprah.
While she waited for a client, Brooke gave us a tour of the Bunny Ranch.
We have approximately 30 rooms and now is full.
Dennis made himself the authority on prostitution. And he said, that's how it works. He goes, media begets media. Once you do one story on prostitution, networks go, let's interview that guy. Pretty soon, he's the guy.
I'm selling sex like other people are selling soda pop.
And when Dennis got into the industry, it was really popular and cool to be a pimp. He had Snoop Dogg, he had Pick My Ride. You know, pimps were really, really glamorous. Dennis had his hat in the ring at that right time because it was cool to be a pimp.
In the early 2000s, it was the time that was sort of selling itself as being all about women's sexual liberation.
There's Heidi Fleiss, whose job as a madam is being talked about as the ultimate success story of an independent woman entrepreneur. There's Paris Hilton's leaked sex tape becoming a pop culture staple. And then there's the photo shoot of Britney Spears that is clearly invoking some kind of Lolita fantasy for men.
And so sex itself becomes a thing to be celebrated.
HBO at that time also had this show called Taxi Cab Confessions, where they put hidden cameras in a taxi cab and picked up people. And it just dawned on me, I said, let's put hidden cameras in the brothel and capture the conversations of white men and women go there. So I called the Bunny Ranch and I said, Dennis, can I come do that? Sure, come on out. So we drive to the Bunny Ranch and Dennis says, George, you know what I want? I go, what do you want, Dennis? He says, I want to be a household name. I said, I'll do my best. So I show up at HBO's documentary division, and Sheila Nevins was in charge of that. And Patty Kaplan does all the directing. They had done Real Sex Together, that show, and other documentaries. And Sheila Nevins says, you think it's a wonderful idea? So I turned the reins over to the HBO folks, and, Sheila and Patty, and they did the rest.
So the genesis of Cat House was, it didn't seem very much different than all the TV and media that we were already doing.
So sex and entertainment at that time covered two sides. One side was that all porn denigrates women, and then there was another side that said porn empowers women, and can empower women if it's done correctly. And in this kind of ferment, this little show came onto HBO.
Dennis wanted me to be a big part of the Cat House show, but I didn't know that young girls would come to work there that probably would have never even thought of working at the Bunny Ranch. They hadn't seen the show. So looking back, I should have never agreed to do it.
Many people told us they'd had stuffed crust pizza from Domino's before. Oh, only Domino's has never had stuffed crust before.
With the pizza.
Until now. Introducing Domino's new and first ever stuffed crust pizza. Try
Evocative new HBO documentary is showing viewers a very different kind of house.
Cat House was supposed to be the first time ever they filmed live negotiations from inside a brothel.
On the upper party, we do lots of massage, sensual music, sensual massage. Everything's totally paid attention to you, all about you.
I was the director of photography, the gaffer,
The coordinating producer, one of the sound mixers for HBO's Cat House.
I was contacted by New York producers saying, can you do this job? Can you be there? It's going to be very hands-on. I didn't know anything other than there's going to be a lot of sex workers in this shoot, and it's going to be odd and weird, but they're paying, so I will go.
so I was shooting a lot of documentaries. I had an old friend by the name of Patty Catlin, who was the director-producer of the show. So Patty thought of me when she had to shoot in the Cat House.
Why did you want to make this documentary? Was there some sort of message that you were going after? Was there some sort of morality that you wanted to explore?
I think actually the approach was extremely non-judgmental. No, there wasn't a morality to explore. It was more like, this is an environment that people are quite unfamiliar with. So let's get inside and see how it works.
Honestly, when they came to me and said, you're going to be spending months at a brothel, I'm like, great. And then I'm like, what? You just think you go into a brothel and you have sex.
Come here, you sit right here. Lay you down here, Mom, come sit over here. Have a chat with us. So in case we've never had sex before. No, it's time.
But it was mostly about the way the girls work with the men and how they negotiate. They come up, you know, with a price.
Just be right about that for an hour. You guys be interested in something like that. Look at the look on Mom's face. 1,000. It's about to be only big time.
On Cat House, we had a very particular kind of task. We wanted to make the environment look natural. We wanted to feel like that was what you would experience if you walked into the room. We also want the faces to look good. There's a certain amount of glamour, and in order to create that glamour, we need to actually use lights.
Cat House was a fascinating little social experiment.
I would really like you to just get aggressive, jumping and stomping and all that kind of stuff. And
That dealt with the way people's sexuality was being expressed.
Oh God, I remember that guy.
Tomorrow night on HBO, right after the season finale of The Sopranos.
I think they're programming Cat House right after the season finale of The Sopranos. And in season 4 of The Sopranos, so it already has like this kind of robust built-in audience. It says something about the network's desire to want this documentary to do well.
I remember watching The Sopranos. At the end of the show, suddenly, like I'm in a brothel in Nevada and there's all this craziness going on. There was a lot of nudity and a lot of sex.
I'm trying to get butt naked right now.
What you gonna do for me? I want to party with you. You pay me less and I'll get butt naked for you.
Yeah, goddamn.
It was like
Dina.
a traffic accident that you can't avert your eyes from.
It very much sort of focuses on the women, but they're constantly talking about how much they love working at the Bunny Ranch, how much they love sex.
I would do this until I was 60 if I could. I really would. It's just that fun.
And you sort of come away from it thinking, oh, what a lovely sort of place for these young women to find, you know, economic empowerment.
What do you think people will walk away from at the end of this, watching this documentary?
I'm disgusted, intrigued,
No,
wanting to sign up to be positive.
I mean, that's disgusting. Then they may have been, and there's a perspective, you know, that needless to say about selling sex that doesn't make a lot of people comfortable. But I think the environment is so pleasant.
The tone of this documentary is, it really just reads as like a PR puff piece.
Because this is compelling television. Nobody's seen the inner workings of a working girl in a client. This is unbelievable television.
Both Patty, the director, and Dennis had a pretty clear idea of what they wanted to do before it happened. They would really plan it out together.
It wasn't a documentary. We were told what to do. The Cat House show was set up.
Who likes movies?
This was the first scene that I ever filmed for Cat House. When it comes to actual oral sex, we had to teach a class about sex to a bunch of men, and I just remember being very nervous.
You know, sometimes guys will just dig in, and it may be painful, the girl's not worked up enough, you gotta start out slow.
That is not a client, that is Jesse, and he was a driver and a bartender at the Bunny Ranch.
Usually try to get them beforehand, and just by rubbing and touching.
Everyone in the scene that was supposed to be customers were actually friends of Dennis or people who worked at the Bunny Ranch.
What do you like about Vicks?
Like vanilla a little
Yeah.
bit. This was something that they concocted for the show.
This was definitely not what I thought it was going to be. The reason I wanted to work on this series was because of the people that I was working with. I knew that they were serious documentarians and did, really quality work, and I could learn a lot from them. But here we had documentary people controlling who appears on camera and what's going to happen when. There was a constructed reality that was for entertainment purposes.
They want their scene, they want what they want, they've got it in their head what they want it to be, and they're gonna manipulate you to get it, whether it's good or bad for you.
Another technique is what Amy is.
Regardless of what it does to your image.
I'm madly in love with Cat House. I'm just madly in love with the whores.
This is an interview with Sheila Nevin, head of the documentary unit at HBO.
I love them. They're honest, they're great actresses. The greatest actresses in the business are in this expensive whorehouse. I mean, to act like this guy matters to you, you gotta be really an actress, studio actress to do that.
Patty liked my look. She liked the fact that I was tall and thin and large-breasted and long blonde hair, and she didn't like my eyes. At one point, Patty Kaplan told me I needed to have my eyes done, and the cameraman got mad at her and pulled her out in the hallway and said, "Don't you dare talk to her that way. Don't you tell her she needs plastic surgery."
All right, boys. Well,
She had Betty Davis eyes.
and we have to go now because we're all horny.
Cat House was basically just promotional video for the Bunny Ranch.
The fact that I was a softcore porn actress is humiliating. But Dennis told me I was going to be a star, that I needed to be on this show, I'd make tons of money, I would be famous, it would make everyone rich. It didn't make me rich. I was victimized, and Dennis Hawk was the main victimizer.
It was hard for the town to process.
It made you look at people differently.
How would someone do this to this young mother? It's hard to talk about.
I was very scared the first time I was in a lineup. I didn't know what to expect.
The bell gets rung.
So the bell would ring when a person would come through the door, and they run down the hallway.
Women would come running down these two long hallways in their 4-inch heels, and they came in and stood in this thing called a lineup, where they tried to attract the attention of the guy who came in.
I both felt pick me and don't pick me because I was nervous.
One of the first things we did was shoot the lineup that Dennis wanted women to do when a new client comes in. And it's a demeaning process. Pick your Barbie. Do you want disco Barbie? Do you want this Barbie? Do you want sexy Barbie? But Patty immediately said, well, it's a stage. Give them a spotlight and let them show themselves off. And what Tom and I saw was, no, this is not showing off. This is human beings on sale.
But if they did too much to attract the attention, that is, if they talked beyond hello, my name is, or if they revealed too much, or they did a little too much action, it was dirty hustling.
I remember one episode of Cat House that said, there's no moving in lineup, and then they cut away to a shot of me just moving through all this stuff.
You don't want them to do things to give an unfair advantage.
Grind or anything.
I could be the brunt of a joke. It's okay. But it became more difficult for me as I became more
That
famous
black girl
because people would think
and Air Force
that,
Amy
she's
were
too famous,
serious
she's gonna cost too
rivals.
much.
Oh, thank God. This is not going to cost you nearly as much as
Because we all say our names and they go, Air Force Amy. And I think I'm getting picked, but I'm not. They just recognize me. So not only do they know who I am, they didn't pick me.
When I was picked, I went to the portable little room I had. I was new there, so I just got the worst room there was and negotiated. And when I had sex, I didn't know if I would be able to do what was expected of me for the money. I had just got there. I had no idea what I was doing. I had men that did not want sex. I had one that hired me just to watch me smoke. He had a smoking fetish. And he wanted me to lay on the bed in a seductive pose in my lingerie and just smoke cigarettes. That's all he wanted to see. But most of the time, just regular clients come in wanting sex. And there are repercussions that came from that. There were people that judged me for working there, and there were things that went on that I did not want a young girl experiencing. There are some really sick guys out there that really want some really gross, disgusting things. Men that want to be peed on and pooped on and to be hurt and to be humiliated, or they want to hurt and humiliate you. There were young girls that were coming to work there that probably would have never even thought of working there if they hadn't seen the show. I was 30 when I worked there. I'd already been married and divorced and had experienced life and sex, and it's just horrifying to think that girls so young would want to do that.
Over the weeks that I worked there, I realized that HBO really never wanted to get further than just below this first public relations level. Dennis groping people, I mean, that was a daily occurrence, and they were supposed to like it, and they pretended to like it.
I own the candy store. I'm eating all the candy. I love it.
Nobody asked you ever not want Dennis to touch you when he's touching people. That was not part of the remit of Cat House.
They wanted to sell a show. They wanted to make money off of that show, and they wanted to make money off of the girls having a great time. They just didn't want to show the ugly side of it. Patty would tell us ahead of time what we were going to do. Okay, there's going to be a clown. He's going to come in the door. He's going to have balloons. He's going to pick Shelley. They're going to sit at the bar, talk to him for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then take him to the room. I was expected to sleep with the clown. They thought that it would be interesting for the show.
What you see is what you get. I mean, we don't show exactly, but we get pretty close. We're very tastefully more in a while.
When I think about working on the show Cat House, I think of it as a job that's not my favorite, but I'm not ashamed of any of the work that I did on it. The show tried to replicate that sort of sense of silliness, if you will, because it's a fantasy world. And I bought into the fantasy, but then so did Sheila and so did Patty.
Know yourself, it's us projecting an image. It's us promoting the girls. It's us doing things like we're doing right now to let the world know that the Bunny Ranch is the party place of America.
So it's his business to keep it as attractive as possible. But sometimes it was painful to watch.
I use PayPal to buy this ticket. I'm paying it off.
Patty told me that I would only get paid for sex scenes, that I would not get paid for all the other scenes.
One of the reasons that reality television can be so successful is because you're dealing with a lot of unpaid labor, and yet they make tons of money for the networks that they air on. And knowing that the women in Cat House were not compensated for really being the heart of the show, it's just another form of exploitation.
HBO wasn't much different than a pimp because I was barely paid anything. I was recognized everywhere I went after the show came out. It would have been nice to have a little bit of money to show for it. I was actually losing money being on HBO because I wasn't working when I was doing the filming for the show.
Cat House dealt with an interesting set of specifics in dealing with human beings and the fact that you are selling a human connection. The working girl is doing that, but that is between two people. The fact that HBO is monetizing that sexual transaction in a way that exploited the women, it was making me regret my involvement in Cat House. As we were following the action that happens, we would end up sometimes in the room. And at one point, we were with Isabella Soprano and her client at the time, and we ended up being in the room while she was having sex with the client. This is the first time I'm watching this. This should have been the point where we scooted out of that room. I was like, I did not sign up for this. I'm not here to shoot porn. I'm here to shoot a documentary. This is not what I would normally be doing at work. Like, I was expecting softcore photo stuff, not full-on pornography. This is when you're like, why did I take this job?
That first scene of you cracking the whip that opens every episode, that was something I did not want to do because I felt that men were already intimidated by me, that I was too strong of a personality. That was the last thing I wanted to do. And it opened every episode.
When the girls and I were touching each other in the parlor or making out, those were Dennis's ideas. Dennis wanted to make it look like we were all just waiting to have sex and we were nymphos. So Dennis somewhat became the director because he was coordinating what he wanted to see in the scenes. And I didn't always see Patty Kaplan around. It's kind of hard to say it was a documentary when you have a pimp directing scenes in his own brothel. Watching the show, HBO definitely wanted it to look like a fun place to be. And so I can see where it would be tempting for a young girl to watch the Cat House show and think it would be something fun, but they don't understand the reality of it. They aren't seeing what it really is like behind closed doors with Dennis.
In a brothel, you don't have HR lines to respect. So every interaction with a woman was paternal. It placed him in a superior position to her. He was her boss and her daddy.
Oh my gosh, I'm not on screen.
It made me uncomfortable to call him daddy, and it was weird to see the other girls call him daddy.
The coolest daddy I've ever had. Why do your girls have to call you daddy?
They don't have to call me daddy.
But
my
they do,
girlfriend calls me
it's
that.
just a weird coincidence.
It's just my girlfriend does that.
Well, the thing is, you do treat women like objects to an extent. They're commodities.
The demand is there. They want to fulfill the demand.
Dennis always used to say that just like anybody selling a product, he has to know the value of the product. But I don't recall Patty ever asking any of the women who worked at the Moonlight Bunny Ranch how they felt about sleeping with Dennis, their boss.
I thought it was absolutely revolting that I was expected to sleep with the boss and that the boss could go around and just sleep with anyone that was considered normal. But I was afraid to tell him no. I was scared.
This season is going to be crazy.
He would promote you if you slept with him. He would brag about you.
Dennis had a very active sex life with the working girls. And a lot of the working girls would offer themselves up to him. There were girls that slept with him that didn't want to sleep with him, but thought they had to.
Dennis preyed upon the women that were most easily victimized. I was afraid to not go along with what he wanted. I learned a long time ago to not fight back because I myself was sexually abused as a child. So I learned to build a wall and not think about it. I literally visualized putting brick by brick up. I remember doing that when I was around 12, 13 years old. It shaped me. I probably would have never thought about working at the Bunny Ranch if I hadn't had an old man touching me when I was a little bitty kid. And so whenever I was in a situation where I was having sex and didn't want to, I was doing it for money, I was able to disassociate from the situation and build that wall up and pretend that I wasn't doing that. So that's what I did with Dennis. I didn't know what else to do.
He had a great presence on TV, but behind closed doors, Dennis was the rattlesnake.
After a while, having shot there for one 10-day period and then coming back again, I realized that I was becoming more and more repulsed by Dennis Hoff.
Dennis found it very easy to treat everyone he came across in that same demeaning and sexualized way.
I began to see below the surface into the other layers of what was going on there, the darker side. But as a documentarian, if somebody's in front of my camera, my job is to find the human being in the person, even though I may detest what that person does.
He felt like he was improving a girl's career. And he actually used that as a come on, you need to sleep with me because it'll help your career.
And you got privileges. He would take you out to dinner. He took me to the Billboard Awards.
He gave him everything he could possibly give him, and the other girls were envious of that.
For whoever was his girlfriend at the time, she'd be the one going on the junket and hitting all the shows. So for all the advertising that I did get, it wasn't handed to me. Not like any means. I work, and try to make the most money to get this spot, this thing, and then his girlfriend would get the same thing.
Did you and him ever date?
Did Dennis and I ever date? No.
It was kind of a sick, twisted relationship that I had with Dennis because I wanted him to like me, but I did not want to have sex with him.
I don't think that he had any idea what these women go through or how or why they ended up working for him.
Some days I feel a little bit shaky and I think, oh my gosh, what if he picks me? And since I've been here, I found that just having a couple of drinks relaxes me and lets me not be quite as shaky.
I didn't have the power in the first few years to say no to Dennis. I tried my best to avoid him. I would try to be busy. I was glad when I was booked and I was making money rather than being available for him, and then he would just grab another girl and go out back. He liked that power that he had, that control. And Dennis was very violent when he had sex, liking to slap and choke. It was hard to get him to stop. Once I finally quit going along with what he wanted, I was no longer in his good graces. He was no longer referring me to the big clients, and he started to talk bad about me. He said I had an alcohol problem. He would turn against girls that said no to him. And after a few years, I decided it was time to leave the Moonlight Bunny Ranch.
A daddy's hard to shop for?
I really had no idea of the reach of the Cat House series on HBO. I mean, it did really well, and people were being drawn in by the show itself.
Chrissy is the reason why you use parental controls on your TV, because at 15, she was watching Cat House, and here we are.
If I could talk to my 11-year-old me watching Cat House, I would definitely tell little me that not everything you see on TV is a reality.
So the idea that an 11 or 12-year-old would decide, oh, that looks like fun, that's disturbing that young girls would do that. But I also think that that is the way society works, is we emulate something, we see something, and then we end up doing it.
How did you find each other?
HBO. The first HBO special that aired, I watched it.
The illusion was always there. Dennis kept the place on a cheerful, glitzy, happy level.
Because this is our family. We are a family. This is the best family in Bridgerton we have. I love you all.
So the darker side was kept very private and very much away from the cameras. And that became an image that
Alexis
was
in
then
that
bought and sold
scene.
on television.
When I watched Cat House, I wanted to believe that there could be such a thing as a happy, well-adjusted sex worker. And rewatching it, it's so clear that's not the case. But at the time, I was willing to buy whatever narrative HBO was selling.
If someone had told me that what you're gonna do is basically create a narrative television production in the style of a documentary and try to sell people on its reality, even though we're making it as glamorous as possible, I would have said no.
It is important that I feel my responsibility with that. That if I denied my responsibility, it would still be there, but I would be lying about it. So the fact that I feel guilty about it is there. There's nothing I can do about that.
When HBO first aired the series, I really felt used because I knew Dennis was making money off of it, and I didn't realize it would be so focused on just sex. I knew we worked in a brothel, but I was hoping it would have more of the relationships with the girls and how our lives were. So I did feel bothered by the fact that Dennis and the HBO show used women as property to make money.
Tune in to the Bunny Ranch.
Cat House on HBO.
The Cat House series, over the next season or two, began to attract younger women to the Bunny Ranch.
Around the time that I caught a glimpse of Cat House, it was probably like 11, 12.
Yeah, I think I was probably maybe 11 or 12 maybe.
And I watched with the volume turned down low.
And I was like, if it's that easy, then, you know, I really want to think I want to try it.
And I worked
He
with
loved young girls.
every single one of these girls.
Did not see what was coming.
HBO is glamorizing this life. Who's pimping who here?
It isn't this big sorority. I didn't feel safe.
I've never ever seen anything like this before.
There are people that have died.
She's dead. She's been dead for hours.
There are people that have been murdered.
4 people found dead. One of them was a prostitute and one of the stars of HBO's Cat House.
Dennis told me that she was pregnant with his child, and it just blew up like an atomic bomb.
I'm gonna tell you the real story about the Lamar Odom party. He should have known that stuff is not good, but he wanted more. I was like, Lamar, and I tried to shake him and he didn't do anything. Lamar Odom overdosed, and I didn't know what to do.
Prostitution, it's not a job. It is a nightmare.
I was literally having sex